The conflict between Israel and Iran continues. The two sides even exchange threats. One vows to retaliate, and the other says, "If you dare retaliate, I will escalate." It is noteworthy that the Iranian missile attack came almost exactly 1 year after the Al-Aqsa flood. The Al-Aqsa flood triggered the Gaza war, in which at least 40,000 people have been killed. 6,000 to 20,000 people are missing. Nearly 100,000 people are injured. And nearly 2 million people are displaced. Now the war is expanding to southern Lebanon. And Israel is constantly taking actions to stimulate Iran to join the war until the arrival of Iran's counterattack 30 years after the Gulf War. Missile defense remains a huge challenge. Opposing Israel is the common political correctness in the Islamic world. Through building the arc of resistance, Iran has surrounded Israel from south to north. It has even transcended sectarian differences and won over Hamas, which is Sunni, and is winning the political correctness battle in the Islamic world. This is not only a huge challenge for Saudi Arabia, which is competing for leadership in the Islamic world, but also for Israel. What Israel least wants to face is the Islamic world that can unite since the era of the War of Independence. Israel has been accustomed to being surrounded, but the arc of resistance is different. Historically, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan have all posed an existential threat to Israel. But the Israeli army has become proficient in dealing with such tangible threats from countries and regular armies. Powerful political, military, and economic assistance from the West has also played a huge role. However, the arc of resistance is grassroots. Its source of strength is not tangible countries and governments, but the deeply ingrained anti-Israeli sentiment among the people that transcends sects and tribal groups. Iran plays the role of adhesive and catalyst, providing tangible bases and material support for the intangible resistance forces. Israel is truly plunged into a vast ocean of people's war, but Iran's role as adhesive and catalyst cannot remain at an abstract level. The missile attack on October 1st is a practical action. If the Iranian missile attack in April was disruptive shooting, then this time it is effective shooting. Iran did not issue a warning early and concentrated on using a large number of ballistic missiles with strong penetration power. It did not waste time on low-altitude and low-speed drones and cruise missiles that would obviously be intercepted by Israel. The United States, Britain, and France after Israel assassinated Haniyeh and Nasrallah. Iran's counterattack is only a matter of time, method, and intensity. Israel's air defense and missile defense forces should be on the highest alert, but they still have weak interception capabilities. This shows that 30 years after the Gulf War, missile defense remains a huge challenge. The defense of medium and short-range ballistic missiles is relatively mature in technology, but the problem of imbalance between offense and defense still exists. Ballistic missiles are fast and have long ranges. After a series of essential delays such as detection, identification, and launch, it is still a great challenge for anti-missiles to fly to the interception point in time. This means 3 essential difficulties. Interception in the ascent phase is the most effective, but it is not realistic to patrol and wait over the enemy's launch site for a long time before the war. Ascent phase interception far from the launch base is still technically impossible. Interception in the mid-course is only effective if it is carried out on the inevitable path of the incoming missile. If the enemy can launch flexibly along a broad front, mid-course interception is bound to be full of loopholes. Terminal interception is the most mature in technology, but the coverage area is too small. Not only can debris and wreckage falling still cause considerable damage, but defense also needs to be set up everywhere. Another difficulty is the trade-off between anti-missile coverage and response to saturation attacks. If the enemy concentrates attacks on individual targets, it is very likely that the ammunition will be exhausted before intercepting the main missile waves. while anti-missile forces in other places will have nothing to do, but ballistic missile attacks also have essential difficulties. The attack cost is relatively high in terms of the ratio of dropped weight to launch weight. Ballistic missiles cannot be compared with bombs dropped by combat aircraft. Reusable combat aircraft greatly reduces the cost of war. Ballistic missiles can only be used to strike point targets. It requires a large number of continuous bombings by combat aircraft to cause meaningful damage to an entire country or region. War practices in recent years have shown that modern weapons are extremely powerful, but the anti-strike capabilities of modern facilities are also remarkable. The existence of various nodes makes modern countries vulnerable to being targeted. The existence of various networks means that the effects of all targeted attacks are only temporary. Multiple paths make reconstruction rapid and effective. The amount of indiscriminate bombing required to destroy a modern city or even a country is unimaginable. It can even be said that the effectiveness of nuclear weapons is discounted. In World War II, Hiroshima was flattened by a 15,000-ton nuclear bomb, and 3 days later, Nagasaki was flattened by a 25,000-ton nuclear bomb. But in modern times, a small Bakhmut has absorbed heavy artillery bombardment day after day. The cumulative amount of ammunition used may also be tens of thousands of tons. The spread and hit effect of area bombardment far exceeds that of a single point explosion, making it actually equivalent to a nuclear bomb of a much larger tonnage. It took 85 tons of bombs dropped by the Israeli Air Force to destroy Hezbollah's headquarters in Beirut. Considering the power of precision-guided bombs, bunker-penetrating bombs, and modern high explosives, it may be equivalent to an explosive yield much larger than the actual tonnage. This is still an amateur underground headquarters dug out from under an existing residential area. A fortified underground command post constructed by professional engineers requires a tactical nuclear bomb to be destroyed. Conversely, assuming that all 200 Iranian missiles have a 1-ton warhead, there are only 200 tons of ammunition. This is equivalent to the power sufficient to destroy 2.5 Hezbollah headquarters. This is far from enough to bring down Israel. Pouring all of them onto 1 or 2 open-air bases can only cause a closure for a period of time. As long as engineering forces and repair equipment are effective, it may take only a few days or even hours to restore combat readiness. The Iranian missile attack on October 1st did not concentrate firepower, so the claim that it seriously affects Israel's Air Force sortie capability is probably overthinking. 200 missiles is a significant number, and it is especially spectacular to look at in the night sky. However, in terms of ammunition tonnage and possible damage caused, it is still far from enough. This determines that Iranian missile attacks can annoy or even hurt Israel. But it is impossible to kill Israel. But now that Iran is serious, what should Israel do? People have always been worried about Iran's involvement in the conflict and the expansion of the conflict. But they are not clear about exactly how Iran will expand the conflict. In extreme cases, Iran does have the possibility of ultimately threatening Israel from the ground through Shiite-controlled Iraq and Syria. But this is the stupidest choice among all conceivable tactics. The Israeli army has the ability to completely annihilate the distant Iranian army. And it also completely deviates from the original intention of wearing down Israel through the protracted war of the Arc of Resistance. Iran cannot do nothing and lose its leadership of the Arc of Resistance. Nor can it act blindly and sacrifice the base of the Arc of Resistance. This determines that missile attacks are Iran's limit. The problem for Israel is the opposite. Israel's F-15E and F-35 fighter bombers have sufficient range to reach Iran and useful payloads when necessary. They can also be supported by aerial refueling. Bombs can be supplied almost infinitely by the United States, but Israeli aircraft need to fly over neutral countries to reach Iran. Small scale, one-time operations always have a way, but large-scale and continuous operations are a completely different problem. Israel is almost impossible to obtain permission from countries such as Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Turkey to allow its combat aircraft to safely pass through their airspace. Circling via the Red Sea and the Arabian Sea is too far and lacks the sustainability of combat operations. Israel is said to possess medium-range missiles, but the scale may be much smaller than that of Iran. Influenced by Western military equipment construction ideas, Israel highly values airstrikes but relatively underestimates the role of ballistic missiles. Unless it escalates to a nuclear strike, Israel's medium-range missiles should not play a role as for nuclear bombs. It is said that Israel already has them, but Iran probably does not. Israel can cause tens of thousands of Iranian casualties. Anyway, it has experience in this regard. In Gaza, more than 40,000 people have been killed and nearly 100,000 people have been injured. But to destroy Iran, even if Israel uses nuclear weapons, it is still extremely difficult. Israel's navy is too weak, and a ground invasion of Iran is not an option at all after Iran's symbolic missile attack in April. Israel also only launched a symbolic counterattack. Now that Iran is serious, what should Israel do? It may still only be able to launch a symbolic counterattack, but just make it look more substantial. However, it is still impossible to deliver a meaningful amount of ammunition. This also determines that Israel can only annoy or even hurt Iran, but cannot kill Iran. Israel may strike Iran's nuclear facilities, oil facilities, and even high-level command organs. But Israel cannot achieve ending the war through war. Iran may deplete a lot of its missile stockpile or even run out of it. But given time, the missile stockpile will be replenished. There is no need to doubt this. The damage caused by missile attacks to Israel itself is not important. The boost to the morale of the arc of resistance is the key. For Iran, which needs to wear down Israel through a protracted war, this is a very favorable situation. Originally, it was not expected that a one-off deal could kill Israel. For Israel, which needs to kill Iran through a quick war, this is the worst situation. Being slowly cut to pieces under the strangulation of the arc of resistance is the most painful way to die militarily. Israel has also experienced the intractability of missile warfare in Israel's wars with Hamas and Hezbollah. Israel enjoys absolute air superiority. Hamas and Hezbollah can only be beaten and basically have no way to counter Israel's airstrikes, but in the Iranian missile war, it is Israel's turn to be at a loss. Scattered bombings in small numbers cannot solve the problem. The most effective way is, of course, to directly bomb Iran's missile launch sites. But this cannot be done. Not to mention the problem of flying over neutral countries mentioned earlier. Iranian missiles are hidden in caves and launched on the move. The Israeli Air Force needs a large number of sorties and ammunition tonnage to destroy known caves. It also needs more sorties to maintain surveillance, so that it can strike mobile launch systems as soon as they emerge in the Gulf War. The U.S. Air Force's F-15E hunted down Scud missiles in the western desert of Iraq and achieved some results. But in the end, it was only by sending ground forces in that they were completely wiped out. Under absolute air superiority and in the desert where one can see for thousands of miles. The U.S. Air Force still finds it difficult to reliably whack a mole. The Israeli Air Force's air superiority in Iran is far from that absolute. Iran is a much larger place. Relying on destroying mobile missile launch systems to suppress Iranian missile attacks is unreliable. Air defense missiles are also unreliable after the Gulf War. Israel vigorously developed missile defense technology. Iron Dome and Arrow are both achievements. Iron Dome is useful against Hamas and Hezbollah's Katyusha rockets, but useless against Iranian ballistic missiles. The actual combat effectiveness of Arrow is unknown. Occasional interception successes in history do not mean it is equally useful against saturation attacks. The number of arrows is also too small. For example, the Arrow 3 missile battalion at the Tal Shahar air base between Jerusalem and Ashdod has 4 launchers. Each launcher is equipped with 6 missiles, for a total of 24 missiles. This is effective against sporadic high missile attacks. But it is a drop in the bucket against a rain of missiles like Iran's Israel and Iran reach a balance of terror. Israel needs an anti-missile system like Iron Dome that is low cost, easy to deploy in large quantities, and can be launched in large numbers, but has the performance of Arrow. Unfortunately, such a system does not exist yet. Even the United States cannot help. In the Iranian missile attack in April, American fighter jets intercepted a large number of Iranian drones. At sea, Aegis warships intercepted a large number of missiles and drones launched from the direction of the Houthi armed forces. Britain, France, and even Jordan intercepted a certain number of Iranian missiles and drones. Ballistic missiles are not easy to intercept, but cruise missiles are like faster and lower drones. As long as there is preparation, fighter jets and general air defenses can intercept them, but in the Iranian missile attack on October 1st, American warships launched more than a dozen interceptor missiles. It is not known what the success rate is, considering that at least 2 anti-missiles need to be launched for each incoming missile, compared to about 200 Iranian missiles. This is barely better than nothing. Interestingly, even after the Iranian missile attack in April, the United States did not propose providing the anti-aircraft missiles to Israel. In theory, this is an effective weapon for defending against Iranian medium-range missiles. The United States even hopes that the AD can defend Guam, but the AD is completely absent in Israel. As for Patriot anti-aircraft missiles, they are completely outdated. Israel even intends to directly give some Patriots to Ukraine, just as recycling waste. This also means that the United States is actually unable to assist Israel in missile defense. Israel's Arrow is theoretically at the same level as the AD, and David's Sling is at the same level as Patriot. But judging from the actual combat effect on October 1st, it seems lackluster. The military forces of Britain and France in the Middle East are claimed to participate in defending Israel, but in reality, they are almost useless. Fighter jets cannot defend against ballistic missiles, the pattern of the United Kingdom and France. Shipborne air defense missiles is originally small and has only limited anti-ballistic missile capabilities. They have even given up on attracting attention. Neither foreign aid nor its own strength is reliable, and only a certain balance of terror can be reached with the opponent. This is very unfamiliar to Israel. Israel has long been clamoring about the Iranian nuclear threat. In the Bush era, it strongly urged the United States to launch a military strike against Iran to eliminate Iran's nuclear capabilities. In the era when Bush was attacking Islamic terrorism everywhere, the United States did indeed have its finger on the trigger, but in the end, it still did not pull the trigger. In 2018, during the Trump era, Netanyahu presented a large number of documents at the United Nations, trying to prove the reality and urgency of the Iranian nuclear threat, urging the United Nations to resume sanctions, and inciting the pro-Israel Trump to eliminate the harm for Israel. But the United States still did not take action now. Biden reaffirms his firm support for Israel and declares that he will cooperate with Israel and that Iran must bear serious consequences for this attack. But he did not specify what kind of consequences. When asked whether the United States supports Israel's attack on Iranian nuclear facilities, Biden directly opposed it. The answer is no. Europe is even less likely to support Israel in expanding military strikes. José P. Borrell, the High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, called for an immediate ceasefire in the Middle East and warned that the dangerous cycle of attacks and Retaliation could lead to a loss of control of the situation. French President Macron and German Chancellor Scholz and other leaders condemned Iran for launching the attack and called on all parties to exercise restraint after the Al-Aqsa flood. Israel has determined that only military occupation can reliably prevent the next Al-Aqsa flood. Gaza is the first. Next is southern Lebanon. Militarily, the Israeli army has the ability to occupy Gaza and southern Lebanon. Politically, it can only cross the river by feeling the stones. Importantly, Netanyahu needs to break the cohesion of the arc of resistance. Iran tries to crack Israel through the lasting pressure of the arc of resistance, but avoids a decisive battle. Israel takes advantage of Iran's psychology of avoiding a decisive battle and weakens Iran's leadership over the arc of resistance through continuous provocations and humiliations. So Israel needs to bomb the Iranian embassy in Damascus and assassinate Haniyeh in Tehran, but ballistic missiles make a balance of terror possible. This is not a balance of terror of mutual assured destruction in the nuclear era. Instead, it is although I can't kill you, I can hurt you. You also can't kill me, although you can hurt me. Now Iran's counterattack has come. Netanyahu has successfully courted disaster. But Israel may really need to act alone tactically. Hamas is now in a dormant state. Hezbollah is also in a weakened state due to serious casualties to its leadership and backbone forces. For Israel, now may be the best time to challenge Iran. The U.S. presidential election is approaching. The United States may not be able to strongly pressure Israel, which is also beneficial to Netanyahu's deep courting of disaster. The problem is that the conflict between Israel and Iran and even the entire Islamic world has never been a matter of timing. It has always been full of first days and 15th days. Israel may launch a strong counterattack against Iran and even achieve some success. But tactical success cannot change the reality that the road to peace is getting narrower and narrower. This is the same problem as Israel's assassination war at the same time. The balance of terror has become a new reality that Israel must face.